many of you know, a passion of mine is sports, and so when somebody used to ask me when I was a kid what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was a sports broadcaster. Now, I actually imagined myself doing that as a child. I would sit there with headphones and a microphone, and I would also imagine who was on the other side of the screen, and were they really listening to me? Did my words make a difference on their sofas? And then 6 months ago, I guess you can say my dream became a reality, because in essence I became a broadcaster. A broadcaster to the outside world of what was happening in this place in the moments that I stood here. You, of course, have seen Rabbi Guzik and myself standing here week after week. If you wish, a 2-for-1. We were told, you both go in the chapel. We can have 2 rabbis standing next to each other with no mask. What a bargain these days. But when I walked in here these past 6 months, I'm going to tell you what I saw and what I felt. I saw an empty Cone Chapel, an empty Ziegler Sanctuary, and an empty building. I have a vivid memory when I closed my eyes walking in this building on the first day of Pesach, the moment of our year when literally the entire Jewish world walks in here, packed to the brim, shoulder to shoulder, all of our services happening. And what I saw were the podiums that were set up for the last bar mitzvah before we left. What I saw were flyers hanging on the walls for programs that were canceled. What I saw were pictures on the screens of the children's Hubanei Mitzvah were supposed to be in April and May. Absolutely nothing had changed since we walked in that building last. And absolutely everything had changed as well. Friday, March 13th, the clergy sat in a table in Upper Traub, a room that we know is filled with socialization, family Minion kiddishes, and schmoozing. And it was the moment when rabbis, at least in my generation, have never ever faced the possibility and reality that the synagogue building, the physical plant, would be closed. Would be closed. Not one camera was installed in our building at that time. But we knew that there had to be minyanim. We knew that there was a community to tend to. We knew that there were simchas to have. We knew that there were sorrows to grieve. And so our first thought was, you know what? Other people are set up for live streaming. Let's send a link to a different Minion, and in a couple weeks we'll be back. And after 30 seconds, the clergy, we shook our heads and we said, no, that's not good. Because a community needs to see each other. A community needs to hear each other. A community needs to feel each other. And so we went into the office and printed out the yard site list for that Sunday morning. And we went down the list and we called the members of our community who were going to have a yard site who would have shown up for Minion in this spot in Cone Chapel that Sunday. And we said, join us. So that Sunday morning was simply a phone in my hand in our office at home. We had a Minion. And every single day, morning and evening, there has not been one minyan that has been missed in this community. Overnight, we had a YouTube station. Minion went from 5 to 10 to 20 people. Shabbat morning went to 100 people to 300 people. Most of you have tuned in at least once over these past 6 months. Look at the chats. Hello from Minnesota. Hello from Palm Springs. Hello from Brazil. Hello from England. We have become a global community. What I like to say, with a family Minion feel. My friends, I cannot describe the loneliness that I am feeling standing here talking with you. I'm standing in empty rows of pews, many of them tarped, so people don't sit on them, so they don't have to be Cloroxed and wiped again. I'm staring at the pews right now that you sit in, that you celebrate in, that you cry in, that you embrace, that you speak even during our sermons. We miss that. We miss that. And I stand behind or in front of the ark. And as I said the other day, just as much as we crave the Torah as the moment that I open that ark, I feel that the Torahs have missed us as well. And so it's a simple question. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? Tomorrow we are going to read the Akedah, the sacrifice of Isaac from his father Abraham. And the first three words that we will hear, Va'Elohim nisa et Abraham, it's often translated as God tested Abraham. But one commentator says no, it's not a test. It's a nisayon. It's an experience that we are all living through, and not just the community here, but the entire world, and not just the Jewish people, but the entire humanity. Our commentator Ibn Ezra tells us that if you change the spelling of Nisa, Nun Samech Hey, that God tested Abraham, to Nun Sin Aleph Naso, that actually through the experience God lifted up Abraham. Let me make it very clear. This is not a test from God, because that's not the God that I can believe in or do believe in. Not the God that I want to be present in my life, and not the God that I want to be in the life of my sacred community. But I love seeing these last 6 months as a nisayon, an experience that none of us has ever lived through. An experience that has taken the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in our country, people that we know in this community, people who we love. It has stopped love in its tracks. It has stopped life in its tracks. Some of you have not seen your children for months. Some of us, including myself, have not seen my parents for 8 months besides on a TV screen. They have not seen their grandchildren. We have not seen our siblings. And yet not so. We have been lifted. Because I can tell you truthfully, I have witnessed so many moments of being lifted up, especially in our community. And we have only been lifted up because not so. We have lifted our eyes. Remember what Abraham did? He was about to sacrifice his son Isaac until an angel's voice was heard and said, "Look over there, lift up your eyes. There, the ram, that should be sacrificed and not your son Isaac." Abraham lifted his eyes up. And because of that, we are here today. Day after day, month after month, this community continues to lift each other up at times when we felt the only way to go was down. Early on, some of you gratefully delivered packages for Shabbat to our over 400 volunteers who were on the front lines, medical workers, who were doing heroic actions every single day. During times of social unrest this past June, on Juneteenth, we gathered virtually with my friend Pastor John Paul Foster of Faithful Central Bible Church and other churches and synagogues to have a Shabbat of unity. We couldn't see each other, but we needed to know who were our neighbors, and they needed to know who we were as well. Last week, I witnessed and saw so many of you on the corners of Ashton and Holmby, just through a window, but tears streaming down both of our faces, because we were panim el panim. We were face to face. As you heard this morning, and you will later, we have learned to celebrate in ways that were never imagined. Bar mitzvahs on Pilot Plaza, Shiva Minyanim in your backyards, weddings in your driveways. We have prayed socially distant, but we have prayed spiritually close. Early on in the pandemic, we memorialized our wonderful friend and mentor and colleague, Nick Mermel, right here. I stood and I saw hundreds of people around the country share their love and stories of Nick, a Holocaust survivor and a friend of ours. Each one of these has been a nisayon, an experience. And each one of those has allowed us to see the potential spark in this community. Today, 3 things are different. 1, I'm here by myself. Even I like to talk during services, and there's nobody to talk to. Avinu Malkeinu is not said, because we don't ask God for anything on Shabbat. but rather we accept what is before us and we live in the mystery of faith. And the third is the call of the shofar. Tomorrow we will hear it in our sanctuary service where we all be together. But on this first day of Rosh Hashanah, it is silent. Just like so much of our lives has been silent these past 6 months. We feel its presence only by its absence. Only by not having it do we feel it that much more. But instead we listen to the cold mama daka, that still small voice, praying that tomorrow will be a possibility that we can only imagine is better than today. My family, Minion, I realize that I am not the only broadcaster in the world, but all of us are broadcasters on a two-way street. I have stood in this exact spot watching technology flourish and develop before my eyes. We started with an iPhone. We went to GoPro cameras. We now have installed cameras here. We are ready. We are ready when our doors will open. But you have broadcasted your presence to us. Your stories as we hear today. Your challenges and your hopes to that ark behind me. I watched this past week as so many people entered that door on Beverly Glen and walked out that door on Wilshire Boulevard because all they wanted was to stand before the Torah and say a few words of prayer. Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the world's birthday, but it is pregnant with possibility. And that's what we will continue to do. We will create. We will create moments to mourn and moments to laugh. We will create moments to sing and moments to cry, ultimately moments to lift us up, so that one day, God willing, may it be soon, you will fill these pews with me again. We will embrace, we will talk, and we will hear that blast of the shofar louder than it has ever been blown before. That is so desperately needed in our lives. On behalf of myself, personally, from our family, from Rabbi Guzik and our children, from Rabbi Wolpe, from Kenner Feldman, from Rabbi Rotenberg, from all of the leadership at Sinai Temple and all of our community, we truly say Shana Tova Umetuka. May this year be sweet, healthy, and peaceful. And let us say, Amen. We're going to continue with our Musaf service found on page 100.